Welcome, dear students. This is Dr. Kiran Shende from All India Shri Shivaji Memorial Society's College of Hotel Management and Catering Technology, back again with my recorded lecture series on Principles of Management. Topic for today's learning is planning. Let us now begin with the third part on planning. Requesting those who have missed the first and the second part, do visit my YouTube channel for part 1 and part 2. Let us now understand the objectives of today's session. The objectives of today's class is to learn steps in the planning process. Before we get on to the objective, let us take a quick revision of what we have understood in the previous sessions. We have understood what is planning. We have also understood various characteristics of planning. We have understood the nature and importance of planning. And lastly, we have also understood various advantages and disadvantages of the planning process. So this is what we have understood in the previous part, that is part 1 and part 2. Let us now begin with part 3, that is steps in the planning process. The steps are establishing objectives, determining planning premises, determining alternative courses, evaluating alternative courses, selecting the best course, formulating supporting plans, implementing of those plans, and finally follow-up and evaluation. Let us now break this into various segments and understand each step one by one in detail. The first step in the planning process is establishing objectives. So, plans are prepared with a view to achieve certain goals. Plans should reflect the enterprise objective. So it largely depends upon what objectives the organization is having. Plans has to be made accordingly. Objectives should be clearly defined so as to what is to be achieved by policies, procedures, rules, strategies, budgets, and programs laid out by the organization. Plans must make sure that every activity undertaken contributes to the achievement of the set objectives. So plans has to be made which should fulfill the set objectives of the organization. Step number 2, determining planning premises. This is the second step in the planning process. Premises include actual forecast data, policies, and plans of the enterprises. So now this step we start with the actuals. Planning involves looking into the future, which necessitates the enterprise to know how future conditions will affect its activities. So it largely depends upon how you see the future. Forecasting will reveal those areas where control is lacking. So correct forecasting is very much required here. Planning will be reliable when the forecasting methods are accurate. So it largely depends what method do you adopt for the forecasting. So planning will largely depend upon that. The third step in the planning process, determining alternative courses. So basically, this is the third step. The planner should study all the alternatives first, that is plan A, B, C. Consider the strong and weak points of them and finally select the most promising one. So the planner should always have various alternatives, study it correctly and then select the best one of all the selected alternatives. The next step is evaluating alternative courses. Alternative courses selected should be evaluated in the light of premises and goals. Evaluation involves the study of performance of various actions. Various factors such as profitability and investment requirements, etc. of such alternatives should be weighed against each other. So it is very important to compare and weigh every alternative correctly. Each alternative should be closely studied to determine its sustainability. So a correct study, an in-depth study of these alternatives should be done to understand the sustainability when it comes to actuals. The next step in the planning process is selecting best courses. After having evaluated the various alternatives, the most suitable alternative is selected. So after you check all the alternatives, you select the best one which is suitable for the organization. With this, the plan can be considered to have been adopted. It is exactly the point at which decisions are made. So based upon the best alternative, the plan is made accordingly, and now it is the time for getting the plans into actions and taking decisions accordingly. Sometimes, in the best interest of the enterprise, several alternative courses can also be adopted. So it is also important to have plans, alternative plans also in place, so that if plan A does not work, so you should be ready with the plan B, plan C accordingly. That is how the organization should plan the alternatives. The next step in the planning process is formulating supporting plans. Plans is not complete as soon as the best course is selected. The main plan should be supported by several derivative plans, so you should be having a lot of sub plans included in the main plan. Within the framework of basic plan, derivative plans are formulated in each functional area, so there has to be sub plans made for every main plan. Segregation of master plan into department, section and individual plans will help to understand the real nature of future uncertainties. So the main master plan has to be broken down into various segments so that you can predict the future uncertainties very clearly. And this is one of the very important steps in the planning process. The next step in the process is implementation of the plans. Now, this is a final stage of the entire planning process. This involves putting the plans into actions to achieve the set objectives. So whatever objectives you have set, put the plans into actions and wait for the results. Implementation of plans required establishment of policies, procedures, standards, budgets, etc. So these all are required to have a successful implementation of the laid out plans for the organization. Finally, the last step and one of the most important steps, that is follow-up and evaluation. The management should watch carefully as to whether the plans and programs are being implemented properly. So there has to be a tabs which needs to be kept on every step. The shortcomings of plans can be identified through follow-up actions. So there has to be a follow-up action plan in place to check the effectiveness of the laid out plans, which is very important for an organization. Necessary adjustments in plan become imperative in the context of current problems and situations. So necessary adjustments has to be made depending upon the situation and the problem which arises, and also the feedback which is received from the customers. Actual performance is compared with planned performance and corrective action is taken to rectify the deviations, which is very important. So the planned versus the actuals has to be performed well to identify the corrective actions and to rectify the deviations which are there in the laid out plan. A suitable strategy should be planned and followed for the successful implementation of the planned courses. So there has to be strategy in place to check the effectiveness of the laid out plans. So this is what will make the plan a successful one. On the closing note, let us now see a short video on planning process. Hope this video must have given you clear insights on why the planning process is important for a successful organization. Here are the few references which are used to make this video. Thank you very much for patiently listening. For your understanding, the concluding part, that is part 4, will be followed soon. Those who have missed my previous sessions, do subscribe my YouTube channel for more videos on principles of management. Thank you very much. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you.